7 things that men should know about the vagina. I think we're in for another eye-opening discussion with you. Thank you so much for joining us again on Second Act TV. Once again, I am so excited to welcome Dr. James Simon to Second Act, board-certified OB-GYN, clinical professor at George Washington University, and the founder of IntimMedicine Specialists. Dr. Simon, thank you so much for being here again.
It's really a pleasure to be here, Silken, and I'm so excited to talk about what we're going to talk about today.
Well, me too. Me too. This, of course, is your specialty, women's sexual health. And the topic today is geared towards our men, although I'm going to throw the women in there too. It's 7 things that men should know about the vagina. And I say I'm going to group women in there because it's unbelievable what we don't know about our own bodies. So I think we're in for another eye-opening discussion with you.
Well, I think that we can put men and women together. I think that, in fact, most of what we're going to talk about, because it's hidden inside in women, as opposed to just hanging out there for men, it really becomes a mystery. Even in those 51% of humans that own one, it's oftentimes not well understood or explored or just taught about.
Well, and that's the misconceptions, because we don't have these discussions. So this is going to be a very candid, open discussion where we're going to learn a lot about our anatomy. So number one, the most obvious, what is the vagina? What is a vagina? We don't even get that right.
What is the vagina is oftentimes misconstrued. So many people, men and women, talk about the vagina, but what they're really talking about is the vulva. And I want to explain that with a little visual aid, if I might. So this is actually what we call a vulvar puppet. I'm not kidding. It's a real hand-sewn puppet, and it has all the necessary parts to describe. This is the clitoral hood. Underneath is the clitoris, sometimes called the bean, or that's the glands of the clitoris right there. And then these are the small lips or labia. The large lips, also labia. But the vagina is actually the part that's actually in there. And it's the maroon velvet on this puppet. That's the actual vagina. But when we talk about it in the vernacular, what we're really talking about are the external parts, or the vulva.
Which really leads us to the second biggest misconception, is vaginal orgasms. The fact of the matter is, and I know this from research, only 25% of women have an orgasm from vaginal intercourse?
So it's actually even less, more like 20%, depending upon which study we quote. We sometimes refer to this as the orgasm gap, because nearly all men will have an orgasm with intercourse, whereas only 20% of women will have an orgasm with intercourse. And I would argue that when we talk about that 20%, we're typically talking about younger women, not women either your age or my age, or even menopausal age.
So let's think about all the issues that causes. Women think there's maybe something wrong with them because they don't have an orgasm. The men just think that something is going to magically happen, with the thrusting motions, and we're going after something that may not happen ever for us.
It makes for all kinds of problems. I would easily argue that penetrative intercourse is by and large even the wrong motion or stimulation for women. Without getting too graphic about it, let's just think about what kind of stimulation most women like the best. And while there's no data on this, it's typically more side to side or around and around, as opposed to in and out of the vagina, whereas the men are largely an in and out kind of stimulation. And those are not the same. Around and around or side to side is not the same as in and out. And so we have this difference in what induces orgasm or leads to pleasure. In the animal kingdom, it's even worse, where penetration and orgasm for the male partner may last a second or be reduced to a single pelvic thrust. And it's hard to believe that the females would get much pleasure out of that.
There's probably a few listening that can identify with that.
I'm sure that they can.
Yeah.
Sure
and again, the fact that we can't talk about this, well, I just hope our viewers, get as much out of this as we did from the last one you and I did on vaginal health, because there's so much in here that will change your sex life if you understand what it really is that needs to be done, so to speak.
So there's a correlate here that I want to go on record about. And it's very clear that expectations sometimes don't fit the reality. So if the expectation of a heterosexual couple is that she's going to have an orgasm with penetrative intercourse, which is by and large, as we just discussed, unrealistic for the majority, there's this impetus for her to fake it. And I personally think that's a terrible thing and unnecessary, in my opinion. One needs to be able to speak with their intimate partner and explain what they need. Not that orgasm is always the goal, because it doesn't necessarily have to be the goal. But if that is the goal, don't fake it. Come to some kind of mutual understanding of what it takes. Go get it.
Great point. We've covered that before, and I was something I can identify with. It's a huge problem. So if you're doing that, absolutely, that this is why we're talking about this, so you can understand that this is not a good thing.
And if your male partner is understanding of just these basic facts we've already covered, he should want to give you, the female partner, whatever pleasure it is that's for you. And it could be very different from one woman to the next, but be honest about it and get it out in the open and talk about it.
Well, that's actually point 3 here, that the misconception men have, and you really can't blame them. I mean, we just said, if women fake it, how do they know? But that when it comes to sexual stimulation here, that the way they write it here, different strokes for different folks, that every woman is different, which is why you do need to discuss it. It's not, just do this, and get her off, so to speak.
Every woman is different. Really, only she knows what her special touch points are, and they may be different even for her at different times under different circumstances. If she's older, different things with different partners. The other thing that I would say is that as both men and women get older, nothing works as well or as easily as it used to when they were younger. And so there's a need for modification and evolution, even in long-standing partners who know each other's bodies pretty well. Still a need for evolution there.
Right, absolutely. We had some great conversations with Joan Price on this channel. I'll link to those about exactly that topic. And well, and that leads us right into number 4 here, that just because a vagina isn't lubricated, that doesn't mean the woman is not aroused. Again, another huge misconception that, well, it deserves some very distinct explanation.
So let's start with the opposite. If a woman's vagina is really wet and lubricated, it is highly likely that she's aroused. The opposite doesn't hold true. And it holds true less and less and less often as that woman gets older for several reasons. The lubrication that a woman makes when she's aroused is dependent on her circulation, on the blood flow to her vagina, to the barrel of the vagina. And blood flow and our circulation gets worse and worse the older we get. Complicating that is the fact that men and women take more and more and more medications as we get older, age and blood flow, and medications that can make a woman's vagina quite dry in spite of the fact that she's aroused. Good, gentle, loving partner, male partner, should recognize this and have, or she should have, a good lubricant at the bedside. Sometimes it's not necessary.
Well, coming from an older woman, I would just say have it just have that be a staple at your bedside, because there's no reason to have painful sex. And again, I speak from experience there. There's some women, and again, it included me. I used to hide the fact I needed lube because I thought that there was something wrong with me, and I didn't want my husband then at the time to know that. I mean, it's silly, but I know I'm not the only one. And that's why I really want to have these discussions, just open and honest, because there are women like me out there.
You're not the only one. There are millions of gallons of lube used every day, and not by one person, I'm hopeful, but around the world. And there are multiple types of lubricants depending upon the circumstance and what is being lubricated. And this is part and parcel of every woman is different, and every encounter may be just a little different as well.
And we have also done great videos on that. I'll link to those as well, because there's a lot to know about lubrication. Well, let's get to the actual what gives a woman pleasure, and the clitoris, of course. And I'm trying to see here which way to start this. The clitoris is a powerhouse for pleasure. Do we explain that first and then explain women can get erect too, what that means?
So let me first show all of your viewers what a clitoris looks like, because most people really don't know. I'm going to start back at our vulvar puppet, and this little bean-shaped thing under the clitoral hood is just a small portion of the clitoris. That's called the glans clitoris, but it's just a small part of the entire organ. And this is actually the entire organ. This is the glans right here, and it looks a little less bulbous than in our puppet, but remember, all this has skin on it. And then there are what you might call the wings. There are wings or legs. I mean, I've had people talk about this as a little walking man with wings or something, but the answer is the vagina itself is right there, and there are these wings, as you will, that drape over the vagina itself, which is one reason that many women get pleasure, and probably that 20% can achieve orgasm, even if they're not getting direct stimulation of the clitoris, of the glans clitoris. And so these are all arousable, erectile tissues that are analogous to the same exact tissues in the penis.
Mm.
They're exactly the same, just in the female, there's a slot in the middle we call the vagina, and in the male, they're all larger and more closed together and directed upward, not outward. But the answer is the anatomy is basically derived from the same tissues. All of these tissues are loaded, and I mean loaded with nerve fibers, and most of them are pleasurable nerve fibers unless overstimulated or injured in some way. They're all erectile, meaning that in a flaccid state, they're like this. And as stimulation occurs, they tend to become more wing-shaped and blown up in terms of their volume. And this is all part of arousal before orgasm. Most people don't know that their clitorises have all this walking man shape.
I freely admit this is something I just learned through you. I mean, not just now, but probably last month. Like I said, who talks about this? This is not dinner table conversation or something that most people, they're just uncomfortable. And I get it. I mean, I totally get it. But that is such incredibly valuable information that I can't wait to hear the comments on this.
It also explains why when a woman is very much aroused and the glans clitoris can become quite sensitive, that she can continue to receive pleasure from stimulation of the other parts of the clitoris while her head and the glands catch up to her arousal, so to speak.
And what's interesting about the clitoris in general is the only reason it's there is for pleasure, right?
It's there for pleasure, and we should take solace in that and also rejoice in that.
Yeah, which leads us really to the final point here. And I don't know your answer to this. I'm really looking forward to this. And that is the whole G-spot controversy, because the way that you explained the clitoris and how it is in the vagina, I'm guessing that all is related somehow. Is there a G-spot or not?
So I would love to give you a yes or no answer to that, but I'm going to say maybe. So to the degree that Grafenberg's spot, which is what G stands for, exists, it is not likely one thing. It's likely several things that all happen to be in the same place that is pleasurable. So the G-spot is typically described on the anterior part of the vagina. So the actual vagina, the internal part of the vagina, the anterior wall of the vagina, up toward the bladder. Well, there's a urethra there. There are a bunch of nerves there, same place. There's actually prostatic tissue, like prostate tissue, in the female, same place, and it just so happens to coincide with this confluence of the arms with the glands of the clitoris. They are all in the same place, which could easily explain why that place, about a centimeter in to the vagina on the anterior wall, centimeter or two into the vagina on the anterior wall, is pleasurable. Whether you stimulate the clitoris from the top or the bottom, you're still stimulating the clitoris. Second, women have prostate tissue just like men do. And in men, a prostate massage going back millennia has been a thing. It's not just in contemporary porn. It's a real thing, especially amongst gay men, but men have the same nerves, all men. Women have prostate tissue, although it's far more rudimentary, and the urethra can be pleasurable to gentle stimulation in that same location. So you put all these potentially positive things together. Is that the G-spot, or are they all just in the same place that we call the G-spot? I don't know.
What is the misconception, or danger isn't the right word, but where it misleads us is that some women or men, that's like their mission is to find the G spot. When really, if they listen to this conversation and understand the anatomy of all this, you're going to find that pleasure spot much quicker than something that, it may not exist, because there are all kinds of articles written on how to find the G spot. And that's, to a large extent, I think, is bad advice.
So my advice on the G-spot is that a woman should do her own self-exploration, separate from her partner. Find out if there's a place in the anterior part of her vagina that she finds pleasurable. And if she finds that it's a pleasurable sensation, teach her partner where it is, and then they can decide how or if and when in the process of being together it should be stimulated, or when she wants it to be stimulated. These are all, as we've said before, individual choices, but if she can't find it, he's not going to be able to find it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so the other thing is, sometimes we go searching for things so hard that we lose track of being present for the other person. And it's a common problem when a woman or a man cannot just be present in the pleasure of the moment, and they're always searching for something else, dividing their attention away from themselves and away from their partner.
What a great discussion. I again learned something new. I know that our audience did. And I really thank you for your time in this, and just the way that you're able to communicate this. And I know our viewers do too. We have thousands of comments on our last video, and you make a difference. So thank you for everything you do, Dr. Simon. Before we end today, is there anything else you want to add on this topic?
Yeah, so we didn't talk about vibrators, but I wanted to make your audience aware of the fact that the blood vessels get older, the nerves get older, and stimulation for both men and women typically needs to be stronger as we get older. One of the sensations that is preserved is vibratory sensation, both in men and in women. So it makes perfect sense that if women have lost their orgasm, or it becomes so difficult that they seldom or never can get there anymore, that a vibrator or the intense stimulation of some kind of vibration can help them.
Well, the vibrator industry will thank you for that.
I'm sure that they will.
Dr. Simon, again, thank you so much for your time. I will link to all of your information. Dr. Simon is available for telemedicine calls, right?
Yes, absolutely. And if I don't have a license where you live, we can have an informational call, and I can communicate to your doctor more locally what we've discussed and what might be helpful for you.
So I would certainly encourage you to contact Dr. Simon if any of this here was just a revelation for you and you want more information. Also, please leave your comments. If there's some specific questions that we can address down the road, I'll be happy to put those together for Dr. Simon and see what we can talk about next time. So again, thank you for your time, and I look forward to our next discussion on Second Act TV.
Thank you. Have a great day.